Hey, welcome to today's conversation. We're going to be diving into the conversation on imposter syndrome. If you are someone who wants to make a bigger impact on the world and you're wanting to step outside of your comfort zone and really maybe get on stages, on podcasts, you want to share your message more, you want to grow your business, really anything that you're doing where you're going to be leveling up and stepping into a new identity, imposter syndrome is going to come up. So, that's exactly what we're going to be jamming about today in today's conversation. I'm Deidre Sirianni, and I am the host of the show, the Awakening Her podcast. It's all about awakening your impact, your business, your voice, your spirituality, and all of the things. So, as someone who has done a lot of things, you could say I've written a book, I've been on stages, I've started multiple businesses. I have, to be really honest with you, for the longest time, I did not experience imposter syndrome. I may have had fear, debilitating fear, anxiety, shaky hands, sweaty palms, a lot of things like that. But it wasn't until about this last year when I really experienced imposter syndrome for the first time. And it was the pandemic happened, all that stuff happened, and the world slowed down. And before the pandemic, I was speaking on stages, I was creating my own stages, I was running events. And then, of course, things slowed down and everything was virtual. So this last year, I started to get booked for a lot of speaking events, which for me, naturally, I love speaking. I love talking, and it's one of my favorite things to do. But this last year, I started getting booked on stages with people who I had on my very first podcast like 7 years ago. These are people that I looked up to. These are people who have been in my industry for like 10, 20, 30 plus years. And little D, me, little old D, D is a nickname that a lot of people call me. I was getting asked to be on these stages with these bigger names, and most of the speakers had 1 million followers or more, and I was like the least known person. So guess what happened as we approached these speaking events? Imposter syndrome came up. And I did a lot of different things to help with it, which I'm going to be sharing in this conversation today. If you're experiencing imposter syndrome, maybe with launching a course, putting yourself out there, getting booked on your first podcast, launching a podcast, whatever it might be, I hope that this is helpful for you. So what I did was I had a lot of imposter syndrome come up, and I knew that this was new for me. And I knew, as a coach and as someone who's always wanting to level up, I was like, I gotta be proactive with this, because if I'm not proactive with this imposter syndrome that's coming up, that felt really fucking intense, guys, I knew that I potentially could sabotage these opportunities that were coming my way. And if we don't get ahead of imposter syndrome, it will sabotage your success. But you're listening to the show, you're listening to this podcast. Obviously, there's stuff that you want to do, that you're ready to do in order to shift out of imposter syndrome. So you're making the right choice. So one of the first things that I did to shift out of imposter syndrome was I was being proactive with it. I had these events, I had these things coming up, and I knew that anxiety and fear and all of these negative thoughts were coming up around, who am I to do this? And this is how imposter syndrome will come up. Who am I to be on that stage? Who am I to share my voice? Who am I to have a podcast? Who am I to write the book? All of the things, right? And so what I did was I actually reached out to somebody that I knew, and she does hypnotherapy. And a lot of the mindset work and a lot of the modalities and things that I was using that have worked in the past were not working with imposter syndrome. So I hired someone specifically for hypnotherapy, and it was really helpful. And with that being said, the imposter syndrome still came up at those events right before going on stage, right before saying yes, right before doing the things, as it likes to do. So one thing with imposter syndrome and fear, anytime that you're going after something new, is expect it to come up, because it will. And this stuff doesn't go away. I really just believe that as we continue to grow and expand and reach new levels of our goals, our evolution, things that we're moving towards, sometimes imposter syndrome and fear can come out of nowhere. You can be having a chill day. You're like, okay, I'm going to go and do this thing. And then boom, it's in your face. So if you can be preventative with it, and you know that you have something coming up and you have a lot of fear around it, one of the things that I do right away And I did this the very first time I was asked to speak on a stage. This is like, I don't know, like it was back in 2017. I declared to the universe that I wanted to be a speaker. I wanted to be an international speaker. And so I said that out loud into my space. I didn't tell anyone. I just told God, the universe, And what happened was that week I got a phone call and I was asked to do a speaking gig. And I remember being on the phone with my friend who was asking me to speak at one of his events, and my hand was shaking, my palms were sweaty, and I had every reason to say no, but I said yes. Because the universe and manifestation likes speed. It likes you to say yes before you're ready. And so me saying yes to that experience back in 2017 has now opened me up to be an international speaker, to be a professional speaker, to have all these opportunities. And was imposter syndrome present at that time, in 2017, maybe, but I didn't know enough about imposter syndrome to label it as that. I just would say, I'm definitely not ready. I don't know what the F I'm doing, but I said I wanted this. It's showing up for me. And that's an opportunity. That's a sign that it's for me. Anytime that something's showing up for you that you've asked for, it's because it's for you. And then the question is, are you choosing it back? And so hypnotherapy for me this last year, doing it on a monthly basis because I kept getting bigger and bigger opportunities, was so helpful for me to just really look at parts of myself where I had a fear of being seen, a fear of shining, a fear of putting myself out there in a bigger way, because I had this deeper belief system around, lack of worthiness or whatever the pieces were at the time. I'm forgetting in this present moment, but it was really helpful to be proactive. So if you have something coming up where you feel like imposter syndrome is showing up for you, you want to be proactive. What can I do now in order to overcome some of those pieces? Sometimes it's just saying yes when you don't feel ready. It's about doing the thing and taking massive inspired action. And I will say, for imposter syndrome, for any type of fear, when you're moving towards what it is your goal and what it is that you want, it's important to say yes before you feel fully ready, because the truth is we're never going to feel fully ready. I've been doing this work for many, many years now. I've been a speaker since 2017. I've been in business since 2011. So years I've been a business owner. I'm always leveling up. I'm always growing. There's always things that I don't necessarily feel polished and ready for, but I do it anyways. I do it messy, right? Perfect example, this podcast episode right now, I don't have my new sign that I ordered in the background yet. I don't have certain things set up to look aesthetically the way that I wanted it to look before recording some episodes, but I'm like, I'm just going to do the thing so that it's done, because done is better than perfect. And I think that's a huge lesson with imposter syndrome and putting yourself out there and going after your goals. And I truly believe that the universe and God and manifestation like speed, because when you say that you want something, maybe it's a relationship, maybe it's a certain level of business success, maybe it's a certain level of exposure and amount of people to see and know about who you are, there will be a level of discomfort. Always. And it may not always show up exactly the way you want it to show up, but the universe, God, is giving you an opportunity to say yes to that thing so that you can become who you're meant to be. And I know for a fact, if I didn't say yes back in 2017, when my palms were sweaty, my hands were shaking, and I literally had every reason to say no to this speaking opportunity that I literally didn't even know what I was going to talk about, guys. Like, I was 3 days before the event. I think a speaker couldn't make it. Everyone else on the stage were professional speakers who travel and speak for a living and get paid to do it. And I was, little old D. Who did not even, I don't even think I had my coaching business up yet at that time. I was running a totally different business in the wellness space. And I said yes anyways. And I know that because I said yes to that moment, that's exactly why and how I've been able to have these opportunities to be on stages pretty consistently with hundreds and hundreds of people in the audience with some of the biggest names in my industry. So going back to imposter syndrome, say yes to the manifestations that are coming to you, even when you're scared. That's huge. Take massive inspired action. Okay. The second thing, as something approaches that you have imposter syndrome around, Practice, show up for it, listen to affirmations, do hypnotherapy, do practices to help you get into a state of relaxation. Another thing that I absolutely love, and I think this is important for like overall well-being, productivity, if you want to be a high performer, if you want to be a happy human, is exercising, exercise, exercise, exercise. So as this bigger speaking opportunity, there were a few that came up this last year, but one in particular where I was on stage with someone that I had been, following for probably over a decade, who's been in this industry for like 30 years. And I got up early that day and I worked out hard. And when I was working out hard at the gym, before that speaking event, I was listening to mantras. I was listening to motivational stuff to prep me to be in a great state so that I could show up and do my thing. Another thing with imposter syndrome, a lot of the time, is we're just not really tuned into ourselves. When we are too focused on, oh, this person has done this person's perfect, blah, 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 all the, I'm word vomiting, but all of the thoughts that we have around what other people are doing, we're not focusing on ourselves. We're not focusing on our magic, and we are losing what's important most. And that's our story. That's who we are. That's what we have to give, and we have to start somewhere. So another thing that's really helpful to overcome imposter syndrome is just to focus on being yourself. Focus on being yourself, my friends. Don't focus on being like so-and-so or that person that you really like on the internet or dressing different than who you are. That will actually take you further away from feeling confident on stage or whatever it is that you're doing. Be yourself and trust in that. And if you are working towards being on a stage or being on a podcast or whatever the opportunity is for you, get ready, do your best to be prepared for that thing that you're putting out there, but have a deadline and say yes and take massive inspired action. I can't tell you how many coaches and people in my space who have actually been coaching for as long as I have, who have not been putting themselves out there. I've had conversations with in the last year or two, and they're saying these same excuses that they've had for the last decade. And that's okay if they want to stay where they're at. But if you want to create massive change, you have to take massive inspired action. And what I know about imposter syndrome that I feel like I've had a pretty deep relationship with in the last year is it doesn't really go away, but it actually just gets more intense. At least for me, it's gotten more intense. When I was a newbie in my space, I kind of had like this confidence. I mean, of course, the speaking gig in 2017 definitely was nervous. I'm pretty sure I like blacked out during it. My friends told me I did a good job. My friends told me I did a good job. Okay. Listen to that. My friends were good friends. They told me I did a good job. I don't even remember what I talked about. I'm pretty sure I just blanked out. I blacked out when I was talking, like don't remember anything. Got off stage. I was like, so happy that's over. But that one opportunity opened up a ton of other opportunities, and you have to start somewhere. And so this last round, what am I talking about? It is a last round. This last experience of imposter syndrome that really hit hard was when I was speaking on stage with Danielle Lepore. And for whatever reason, I just had so much imposter syndrome because I was like, oh my gosh, it's Danielle Lepore, And like, it's funny because I've never really been someone to put people on a pedestal, and I wasn't necessarily pedestaling her, but I was just like, wow, like she's been around for a long time. She's doing incredible work. She's been on Oprah, and she is just so badass at what she does. Like, I just love who she is and how she shows up in the world. But for whatever reason, before one of the speaking events, my first speaking event that I did with her, I had so much imposter syndrome, and I was speaking on stage with some other amazing people like Mark Groves and other people that I admired. And I had a lot going on. And the thing is, when I go on these stages or when we step up and we're showing up and we're doing the things that we're here to do, it doesn't really matter, who else we're doing it alongside. We have our unique gifts. And it was so cool because after the event that I was super nervous to go on stage with Danielle Lepore was she came up to me after my talk and gave me a big hug. She's like, I really loved your talk. And this is actually a really funny story. So we're just going to dive into this too, but like, let's just take you behind the veil of this speaking event. Okay. So series of events were happening. A lot of shit was going on in my life at the time. But this was around the time where a lot of leveling up was happening in my business. I was getting booked a lot on stages with a lot of bigger names, people who have, 1 million+ followers, and people who are doing really great work. And although a lot of those people were doing really great work, I didn't necessarily get imposter syndrome around them, but I felt like, I guess it was imposter syndrome. I didn't really feel like I had something to give to these audiences. But every time I went on stage and every time I got off stage, there were people telling me how much my message resonated. And that's the thing. It doesn't matter who you are beside what your message is. It's your unique gift. It's your stories. It's your delivery. It's who you are. It's your background. It's your energy signature that's going to align differently for other people. Right. And now, like, I've been on a few stages with her, with Danielle Laporte. I've been on many stages with Mark Groves and other people that I was, speaking alongside. And it's just like, oh yeah, like that was a big expansion moment for me. And now it's like, okay, cool. Like I've done that. And it really isn't about my story. It's about your story. What are you feeling imposter syndrome around? What can you do to get out of your own way? What are you not committing to and saying yes to? And how can you show up? So I'm going to bring you behind the scenes, my friends, of what I would call is vulnerability. This is probably the most vulnerable I've been on stage before. And it was at that event that I'm telling you about right now where I had that imposter syndrome, and Danielle Laporte was there. So she just made me nervous. I don't know what it was, but I was like, oh my gosh, she's making me nervous, right? And I didn't know that she was watching my talk either. So that day when I was going on, you know what? This might even be a different episode. I think this might be a different episode. I'm going to save this story for the next episode on this show because I want to dive into the power of reprogramming your trauma when you are in a moment of having an opportunity to repattern and rewrite a story. That is actually going to be the next episode after this one. So I want to wrap this conversation up with imposter syndrome, some tangible things that you can do. And then our next episode together, my friends, I'm going to talk about how to reprogram your trauma and make it work for you. And I'm going to share a vulnerable story around being on stage and how I did that. And I can't wait to share it with you. That will be the next episode. So to wrap up today's conversation around imposter syndrome, it's going to come up. It happens to everyone. I really feel like the more I expand, the harder it gets in moments, but it's really about the tools that you have. It's about saying yes before you're ready and showing up anyways. And a few tangible things that help me when before I go on stage or before I do a thing or nerves or whatever's going on is I exercise. I drink water, I listen to upbeat music, I listen to affirmations, I do whatever it takes to get into a great state so that as I step forward on that stage, on that show, on that whatever it is that I'm doing, publishing my book was another thing that was a big imposter syndrome thing of mine as well. It's just about getting yourself into the state, saying yes, and showing up and doing your best, and then knowing that every step along the journey is getting you to that next step. And that's how you overcome imposter syndrome, is knowing that it's going to be a part of you. And you can even have a conversation with that fear and say, okay, I know that you're afraid, but we can do this together. Be friends with your fear and show up anyways. And those are some of the things that you can do to overcome imposter syndrome or work with it. Hypnotherapy is incredible. There are so many other modalities that you can do. And if you're interested in doing a meditation on really tuning into anxiety or fear or whatever may be showing up for you right now with a goal that you're moving towards, go ahead into the link in my bio below in the show notes, or if you're watching this on YouTube, and click the link to get my free meditation on removing obstacles so that you can step more into your higher purpose and show up powerfully for whatever it is that you are working on. Whatever it is that your goal is, you can do it. Before I wrote my book, huge imposter syndrome. Who am I to do this? How can I do this? Oh my gosh, I'm a horrible writer. And then I submitted it and I got great feedback. And that's just how it is. And as we continue to show up in this world, in our life, in our evolution, in our business with our purpose, we just get better and we refine. And I'm someone who naturally is hard on myself. So I have to give myself permission to start fast, which means take massive inspired action and finesse as I go. I hope this episode has been valuable to you. And another thing that's a game changer for me that is right in front of me on my desk right here, right now, are essential oils. I love using essential oils like eucalyptus, like peppermint and bergamot and all of these different oils just to calm myself down before I'm doing something where I may have imposter syndrome and or fear around. And the last thing is people who are doing more than you, the people that you are afraid that are going to judge you, the people who are potentially 5, 10, 20 years beyond where you are not going to judge you in your beginning steps. So anyone who is judging you, who is criticizing you, that, their voice is in your head, unless they're in the arena with you, actually doing the work, actually moving towards the goals and showing up in the way that you're showing up and doing the work, they should have no space or say in your brain. The only people that you want to listen to, one of my rules that I have for me is I don't take advice or criticism from people who aren't where I want to be or isn't someone that I've specifically asked for advice from. So protect your dreams, protect your progress, and show up despite fear, despite imposter syndrome. If you liked this conversation, please comment below if you're watching on YouTube and let us know what has resonated with you. And if you are listening to this on one of the streaming platforms, we would love to hear how this episode resonates. If you can write a review and subscribe, we would love that. We'll be dropping a new episode every week. And next week's episode is going to be about reprogramming trauma to make it work for you rather than against you, because I have a really special story for you. Again, thanks so much for listening. My name is Deidre Sirianni, and looking forward to catching you next time.